What I've done here is I've got the No.4 MkI on top, the No.4 MkII below, and I'll show you in a sec the main difference between these two rifles. Externally the rifles look pretty similar, different timber, different finishes aside, but there was one big difference. One problem that they found during the war was that different climatic conditions could have an effect on the timber. The timber might shrink or warp or twist or whatever, and that would sometimes have an effect on the accuracy because it would have an effect on the trigger pull, because the trigger is part of the trigger guard in the No.4 MkI. So what they did in 1947, when they came up with one of the things that was part of the No.4 MkII design, was, you'll see in just a second. And of course, what would one of my videos be without old mate Vegemite? When you take out the trigger guard, and I've unscrewed it on the No.4 MkI, you see here that the trigger is part of the trigger guard. And so, if the timber would shrink or move, the trigger guard might move, which would have an effect on the pull of the trigger. Whereas on the No.4 MkII, what they did, they hung the trigger from the receiver. So that's now part of the receiver, so the wood can move and shrink, and it's not going to have any difference as far as the pull of it goes. So you see under there where the trigger slides up. So just comparing these two, I'll do it this way. The top one's the trigger guard from the No.4 MkI, and the bottom one's the trigger guard from the No.4 MkII. So they're slightly different. So we have a final look at the three rifles, this time with their bayonets attached. I'm not going to try and attach or remove a bayonet with the camera going, because you saw how much fun it was last time. During the Second World War, or beforehand, they realised that you only needed a spike to do what a bayonet has to do, but then after the war they went back to a blade. So even the bayonets are correct for the rifles, or there are any bayonets correct for a rifle. The Savage marked bayonet, an English-made bayonet on the English rifle, Savage on the Savage, and one of the post-war Mark 9 bayonets for the No.4 MkII. So we'll just scan back across the three rifles in my collection, three No.4s that I've got so far. Hello Vegemite, and just a bit of a last look at them all. Whoop. Few little identification ideas I'll show you. This is the Maltby. You can't really see, but you've got 1940 something. I reckon that looks like a 0, but they weren't making them in 1940. And you've got a BY serial number. If it's an English rifle and has 5-digit serial number starting with a 1, I think that's a Maltby. Starting with a 2, that's a Shirley, and so on. Maltby, you can see what looks like a Y on the top left there. That's part of a misstamped Maltby Flying M. And the Maltby, the English Second World War rifles, have the No.4 MkI details electro-penciled into the left-hand side of the receiver. The Savage rifles, which this is a kind of tired example, a little pitted there, but not such that it affects the rifle, the guts of it. They have the square S for the Savage, No.4 MkI star, and they have a serial number there, usually with a C. So, yeah. The No.4 MkII rifles have the details electro-penciled into the left-hand side of the receiver, and by this stage they'd gone back to having the date. So it's 453, a PF 27,000 number, and No.4 MkII and an F in a brackets, which means Fazakerley. They were the only ones. Fazakerley were the only English factory making the No.4 MkII. So folks, I hope you've found something a little bit useful or a bit entertaining or a bit informative in this particular video. I'm more of a No.1 man, being an Aussie. Got a soft spot for the old smelly. By the way, a No.4 is not a smelly. It's not an SMLE. Only the No.1s are the smellies. So if you hear a No.4 smelly, Lee-Enfield, new, that's not right. So back to the Vegemite, back to the rifles. I hope this has been useful for you. Again, if there's anything that you'd like to see, leave a comment.